Welcome back. If you're here, I can only assume you're here for carbon fiber repair. We're gonna jump right into this one today. Today we have a DSM Eagle Talon or Mitsubishi Eclipse carbon fiber hood that we're gonna do some repair on. As you can see, it is in very, very rough shape. We've got some major epoxy peeling over here. We have major clear coat epoxy damage over here. It looks like it dragged on something. Neat. We got major damage up here. We've got some scratches here. Major damage in here and along here. Major damage over here, up here. This is pretty serious here, but we'll see what we can do with that. And up here and here. Overall, it's gonna need some love, but it's okay. Like I always say, we can fix that. So step one, what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna hit this with something pretty heavy, like a 220, 240, and see what we're working with. I'm gonna take that to the more damaged areas. Now you wanna make sure when you're doing this, you don't burn through. If you burn through the carbon fiber, you're done, game over. So that's what I was saying in some of the areas where the damage down here is more significant, and there's a lot of it. So we'll see what we do and see what we can come up with.
Actually kind of interesting how it's peeling back like that, but we're gonna definitely have to do some work to feather this. But okay, watch this. Sweet.
All right, let's get cruising. So I've got it all sanded down for the most part. It's worse than I thought. It always is. It always is. Nothing goes as planned. I'll show you what we're dealing with here. You know the swirl marks, I just kind of blew it off the compressor. But here's the thing. So once I went and I feathered everything out, it means like pulling it back to the point where it's solid. You can see now we have dark spot, light spot, dark spot, light spot. That's gonna show through the clear coat. So what we're gonna end up having to do is we're gonna have to re-epoxy this whole head. Not a big deal, pretty quick. But first I wanna address, we have to go around and fill all of these. These are probably stone chips, I'm guessing. This one looks like at some point in its life, maybe it was dropped on the corner. I do have to peel that back. If you have yellowing like that or a different color, that's not gonna stick. As you saw in the corner over there, I did use the die grinder to grind it out right here, and I'll show you how we're gonna fill that. And again, here, this looks like at some point it was dropped in its life. Oh, I didn't even notice that. See, it's a good thing we're going around videoing. We'll have to fix that. I'm gonna go around, do those, and I'm gonna show you guys how we're going to fill these holes before we re-epoxy the entire head, and then sand it and then clear it. It's a process. All right, so I mixed up a small amount of epoxy, and what I'm gonna do is, you can see I have this resin tape here. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put little dabs there and then fold the tape over to keep it in place. Otherwise it's gonna run off and we're not gonna get build. I'd rather have a high spot than a low spot because we can sand down the high spot. Just going around making sure these are all on here nice and sealed. And then we're gonna go ahead and apply the resin. Something like that kind of gets us in the ballpark. I'm not too worried about the little ones like this, as when we go ahead and do the next layer of epoxy, it will kind of fill those in on its own. These ones are just a little too deep for that, and I wasted some. Guys, it's been a couple days here. Let's see what we're working with. So the whole plan, the reason you put the tape on is to keep the epoxy at one spot and keep it flat. So see that? You can't even see where that damage was, right? That's the whole plan. Let's go to the front and see where it was really damaged. So moving around here, if you remember this was damaged quite bad. Now it looks like that. So there is a ridge you can't really see in the camera there, but we're gonna sand it all smooth and see how everything looks. And then we're going to get our layer of epoxy on here so that we don't have these different color transitions here like that. Just a quick before and after, but this is before I sand it. You can see we got some ridges here from the tape, pretty big ridge there, pretty good lip here. So I'm gonna hit this in a 120 grit anywhere I had that epoxy, and that way it will kind of knock it down in a hurry, but also give the new epoxy something to bond or bite to. Okay, I got everything all cleaned off here. I used a tack towel, cleaned it all off. So here I've got the epoxy just gassing off again. This is a epoxy called 3 System, or the brand is 3 System. This is called the Clear Coat. It's a beautiful epoxy. It's self-leveling, gases off really nice. I really enjoy this epoxy. We're gonna get that on here. It's gonna cover everything up nice. And then tomorrow we're gonna come back and we're gonna sand it again. And just like that, you can kind of see the depth it gives. Look how good that looks compared to where we sanded. But this is how nice that product is. It is very expensive, but man, is it a premium product. That looks wonderful. Just like that, and I'm gonna let this sit until tomorrow morning. Tomorrow morning, I'm gonna come back and I'm gonna sand it and get it nice and flat. Although it looks flat, it's not super flat. Kind of see some waves in it, but we're gonna get this thing as flat as my ex. I think I should point out, so all the areas that we corrected did come out really nice, with the exception of a couple. So that really bad damage on the front here came out pretty good. I can fix that a little more yet. This came out okay. This is where it was peeling. The problem is there's 2 layers and it was peeling on the carbon. And then that right there, there's not much a guy can really do about that, I don't think. I mean, if you were really good with airbrushing, you could probably do something with it, but that's okay. There's not a lot we can do. The hood looks 150,000 times better than it did. So that means we're moving in the right direction. And we're back. It's been about a week since I did this. Just got busy, like, you know how life goes, you get busy with things. So anyway, last we finished off, we put that layer of epoxy on here. It's time to sand it down. So when you sand down the epoxy, you don't want to start too soft. Like if you start with a 400 grit, you're gonna be here all day, but you don't want to start with like an 80 grit either. It's gonna be too much. So we're gonna hit this in like 220, 240. And then what we're gonna do is we're gonna go to a 400, then probably a 600, then an 800 before we can clear coat this. So I guess we'll just jump to that. Now, one thing you wanna do, after 400 grit, you wanna start sanding with what they call wet sanding. So what you want is to take your water and add a little bit of soap detergent to it. And that's just gonna add a little bit of lubricant, and it's also going to keep your sandpaper from clogging up from the epoxy, because as you're sanding, the epoxy really retains its heat, so it's gonna help keep it cool. So we're gonna get that done, and I'll see you guys on the next and almost final step. Check it out. So this is something like what you want. This is a 220 grit. Now I'm gonna go over the whole thing. I did wipe it down with some water after just to make sure it looked okay. What you don't want is, you see this texture right here? And here you want to make sure you sand that out, because that's going to come through in the clear coat. So anyway, I'm going to hit this in a 400 and then a 600 and then an 800 yet. So you probably can't hear me, but I just put the first layer of clear coat on. We're going to do 2 layers in total, if you can hear me. Let's see what I edit next. But anyway, that's how we're looking right now. All right guys, the hood is looking fresh and fire. There's a few spots I'm not overly happy with. Nothing I could really, I could do it. I'm going to explain it in a second here. But first, no, there is no first. We're just going to get into it. Oh, there she is in all her glory. It's the next morning. So there is a little bit of dust in the paint. Not much a guy can do there. I mean, I'm doing this in my garage, right? And then over here where I faded the front black, it's hard to tell. We'll see it on the other side here. But all this came out really good. There was that one spot where it was burnt through up here. You know, honestly, not a lot a guy can do. And that's what brings me over here. So this spot right there, and I had to move it into the sun to see it. So I'm not sure if in this hood's life at some point, maybe it was dropped on the side or something, but this is where it was cracking I was talking about earlier in the video. And I took this down to probably a 1/2 mil and I could still see it. And I was starting down here to kind of get through the carbon, or get through to the carbon. And once you hit the carbon, you're done, it's game over. So I didn't want to risk that. So I just called it there. I mean, it looks 1,000 times better than it did. But yeah, you can see how I kind of blended the front with that front carbon black lip. And then see, it's only this side that's like that. So I'm not sure what happened at some point in its life that it did this, but not much a guy can do. Over here, I wish I'd put a little more black on the back side of it here. Not something to get too crazy about though. Still have to grind out the washer nozzles a little more, but the clear is still very fresh. But overall, yeah, I mean, it came out pretty good. I'm pretty happy with that. Hopefully Chris is happy with that. Everybody's happy. Good chow.